Well, there's no turning back now. Welcome to the Connect Feature Gamers. We have me, Derwin, Venom, for Snatchy,
What's
Ujiro.
my
What's good? There's a lot of things to touch on, a lot of things to talk about. Gaming has had a lot of things happen over the last couple of weeks. We got CD Projekt Red coming out with their dropping their news. We had the new Mario trailer. We had Genshin having the single worst interview ever recorded by a company. So it's a lot to touch on. What do you guys want to start with?
uh, let's
I,
let's
I,
let's let's
I
go ahead and get that Genshin out the way.
yeah. I wanted to ask about the single worst Genshin, what you call 'em. What made it the single most worst interview that they could ever do? I was just wondering.
Well,
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
yeah, it was an interview in which GameSpot did the interview. It's important to talk about like how the interview actually came about. It
Mm-hmm.
it was an interview through email. Okay, that's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing. And basically they sent, I'm not sure if they sent all the questions at once, but they sent the questions and they got responses back. None of the responses really answered any of the questions. And all of the questions were burning questions. So questions that a lot of content creators have been asking for a long time. And
Mm-hmm.
Tectone, I was watching Tectone's Tectone, he's one of the biggest Genshin streamers. I was watching one of his streams after this interview came out, and he mentioned that the guy who did the interview is one of his friends. So I was wondering, he didn't mention it outright, but I was wondering because a lot of those questions that were asked, I've heard Tectone ask before. So it
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of questions that I feel like Tectone wanted to ask specifically. But I'm not sure if Tectone had any influence over the questions, but these were burning questions that not just Tectone, but a lot of people wanted to know, especially on in game.
Okay.
And so that's what made it the worst interview, just their lack of answering questions. And people have mentioned that other companies have done similar things in like corporate speak and not really committing to anything.
That's what I was gonna say
Yeah.
because
So
I
so
watched the interview, right?
so
And for me, it seemed like that was standard interview practice. Keep in mind, this is an email interview, meaning that it's not like the heads of development, everybody CC on this email, and everybody's like intently focusing. It's just probably one programmer, and he can't say much.
Right.
So you just he's giving out generic answers that don't really answer anything. And
Yeah.
I feel like because of the questions that were asked, people were like really into it. But you have to realize that you're not talking to Mr. Genshin here. It's an email. It's not even in
right.
person,
That's
And,
a
and
good
and
point.
it's being translated from Chinese. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and I have some I want to chime in on what he said as well. So and part of that, people can take what people say out of context just because they say, "Oh, it's no end game." Who says that we're even at the middle of the game? See,
that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
like no one knows where we're at. So for these people to get mad and say, "Oh, it's the death of Genshin," I listen. I play a lot of games. No one knows where we're at in the game. No one knows where this is going. No one knows what the life of the game is. So to come and bash these creators and say, "Hey, they not getting in game." Who says that you're in the middle of the game?
Well,
You
I
don't know
do
where you're at. You're
I
making
do want to clarify.
assumptions. Hold on. Well, they're making assumptions of where they're at in the game, and because they're not making another time trial. Just because they say, "Oh, we're not doing anything with this part of the game," doesn't mean that they're not going to put more elements into the game. As we played Genshin, it has all evolved into things that people either liked or disliked, with fishing, with new areas, with new games. I think that people are being more critical when they don't know what's coming.
That's a good point.
Holioverse also makes the game Honkai Impact. Honkai Impact, when it first started off, wasn't the hottest. It's a good game, but as it went on, it added more elements. I think everybody is getting psyched up and trying to just bash these people before they know what their future plans is.
Exactly.
And I think
And
that's a problem. And that
so
that's what happens with screamers when they don't get what they want. So I think everybody needs to calm down and keep playing the game and not, take this too much to heart because they don't know what the future of the game holds yet.
Yeah,
Just my impressions. Sorry I went on a
gotcha,
rant right there.
gotcha.
I kind of want to clarify what people mean when they say end game, because when they say end game, they're not necessarily meaning this is the end of the game. We're done making content. What they mean is that they want something to do when there's no content happening. So basically, they're like, okay, I'm finished the story. All my characters are maxed out. What am I supposed to do? I need something besides just running the Spiral Abyss 3 times every 2 weeks. I want some end game content. That's what they mean.
Yeah,
Now that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to clarify that's what they meant there. And the other thing is that,
But a lot of those people have stuff to do and they don't do it.
well, yeah, because they only care about the combat, and that's
Exactly.
that's the problem. They're like, they have their own vision of what they want this game to be. When this game first came out, these people were like, "Yo, this combat system is amazing. Look at all the elements and all the strategy. I can't wait until they introduce like raids and raid bosses and guilds and things, so I can really like expand, really like explore this combat system." They're not getting that. Instead, they're getting like more of a game for everybody. You're getting some fishing, you get some card games, and they're like, whoa, where's the combat at? And they're not getting it, so they're angry.
Yeah, but they never know if raids coming. They never know if those. What if they come up with something that's like a raid but not a raid? They might not want to go down the system of saying that a raid, because I've seen raids go really bad in other games where they made these convoluted fucking things that you have to do, and it is more daunting than it is fun. That might be why they said they don't want to bring raids to the game. They might bring something like a raid but not a raid. So again, it goes back to the topic of, like you said, people wanting something, and when they don't get it, they're like, "Oh, well, we don't know what the game is going to offer." That's what I'm saying. We don't know the future of Genshin Impact. And for people to say it's dead just because they don't know what's coming in the future, don't fear the unknown. They're fearing and thinking just because people are being vague with them about where their game is going. It's been so many leaks in Genshin. What that creator probably was trying not to do is make another leak or jeopardize his job.
that's a good point.
So
But
everybody has a job, just like Tectone and them. They're worried about their job security, so they don't care about the people that work at Genshin. Those people also have a family and have things going on. So if I tell you everything that I ain't supposed to leak, I might not have a job tomorrow, Tectone. I might not have a job in Viosity. I might not have a job, MTash. I'm not cracking these guys' name for that reason. I'm just saying that I think they're getting hyped up on, oh, the game is dead. You don't know what the game's going to bring. You don't know.
It speaks to what we were talking about before we actually got started. The content creator dynamic of how, because as a content creator, when you read the words that Genshin did say, which is, we're not creating another Spiral Abyss like mode. If we're going to create some kind of in-game mode, we wouldn't create a Spiral Abyss like mode because we feel like it's going to create anxiety for our players. And that's, and then they say, if you look at TCG, we feel like we have an open world game and we can do a lot of different things for people who, are at the end of the game. And they didn't specify what that was. So as a content creator and a person who likes the combat in the game, it doesn't give you doesn't give you any hope that you're going to be able to sustain
creating content.
Yeah, that content. And so what the content creators are looking for is just, hey, we're going to be fine 6 months down the road. And that's a unique problem to them. So for us who are more like, I'm trying to be a content creator, but we just play games. We can be patient. It doesn't really change anything because we have jobs outside of that. But that couples, but that couples with the fact that we have this movement, community-based movement on video games where people are flowing with the content creators. So it's this thing going, and Asmongold touched on this a little bit, but like basically you have a scenario where people will play a game and they'll check the numbers, and when the numbers start dropping, they say the game's dead and they don't want to play it anymore. Even if they're having fun, because they feel like nobody else is playing it, they don't want to play it. So there's that also happening.
And I understand that, but this is the thing. gotcha games are never going to change. They're called gotcha games for a reason because they lead you down a weird path. If everybody that was creating content thought that Genshin was dying, let's just be honest. If Genshin died, would it not be another gotcha game came up? All these games that just came out recently, even Tower Fantasy, those guys that was screaming Genshin were also screaming Tower Fantasy and also doing the same thing. So I wouldn't say that one game is dead when you're doing the same thing in every game if they're gotchas. Tecton pulled over $2,000 on, or one of them pulled over $2,000 in Tower Fantasy. So what's the difference? Why would you bash Genshin because they haven't came out with something soon as you wanted to like it to see? We don't know what, like I said, we don't know where the game is going. We don't. So it's easy to say that something's dead. And I think that people need to have their own consciousness about this and say, okay, do I want to play this game? Am I having fun?
I think people will do that. I think Genshin. I don't think Genshin is going to die for that reason. I think I think Genshin was successful in obtaining. That's the other thing. That's the other side of it, right? Like based on the answers, they didn't give a lot of answers, but based on the answers, the way I saw it was, Genshin has the data, right? They know what their player base is, right? And the thing that was interesting to me is that some of the content creators that I was watching saw them say that our player base would get anxiety from this. And they say, but isn't me and my community the player base? And when I see a company say that, I think they're telling me that majority of the players are not, they don't want this type of content. Specifically the Spiral Abyss, because they said they wouldn't create another Spiral Abyss. And they're looking for more horizontal difficulty content. Because I believe the Trading Guard game can be difficult, right? It can be difficult. It's just not using your characters. It's a more horizontal, right? It's just like it's moving to the side instead of vertical, which is using the gear and stuff that you've been grinding this whole time. So, and then the other thing is
I think it's going to be more combat based. What you call them that people are not not expecting. Because this is the thing,
we don't have
the anxiety, right? But
the
the anxiety of the game comes from the time in the game. Let's take all your characters in Genshin and let's do the Spiral Abyss with no time on it. They just said like the Spiral Abyss. You could have something that was an untimed what you call them. No one knows. No one knows. That's what bothers me about the whole thing. When you don't know, you can't speak on something you don't know.
Right, but from the perspective of the content creators and people who want this content, a lot of these people, and it's still a small percentage, as I think is evident from what Genshin Hoyoverse is saying. They're saying that we can beat the Spiral Abyss very easily. So if you don't, because they did say in the interview also, the Spiral Abyss is the most effective way to test your account. And we're not going to create anything like that. So it does seem to say there won't be anything harder than the Spiral Abyss in the game. And if that's the case...
So does it have to be the Spiral Abyss for it to be challenging? I fought bosses that was worse than the Spiral Abyss. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know why there's a taboo against that.
When we talk about the Spiral Abyss, I think most people are talking about floor 12, and there is nothing in the game currently that is harder than floor 12 because of it's not because of like the mechanics, it's because of HP and damage,
right? But a lot of the fan base hasn't been to floor 12.
But that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of the content creators and their communities believe they are the fan base, and a lot of them have reached 412. And I'm saying that you're right, a lot of people haven't, but we don't have that data.
Right.
And then Tectone says, well, I believe that Spiral Abyss in hard content is popular because look how well it does on YouTube. They're ignoring the fact that if there's 65 million people playing the game, that doesn't mean that it might be only like, and I'm just because I don't know have the data. It might be like 5% of that base that watches YouTube, and that's still enough to build these 400,000 level audiences. And then it's also the things that people don't consider is how many of those 400,000 that watch Tectone and 200,000 that watch MTash, how many of those are the same people just watching both content? So it's like no way to look at YouTube audiences and say this is the whole entire audience of the game. You know?
Oh, but there is the this is kind of an assumption. They will have stats from within the game anyway. They'll know how many people are playing what type of content.
Yes. Yes.
And though they're obviously not going to attach like user profiles to characters, they can probably see game profiles, so in-game profiles. So like, for example, they can see your account. They don't know that your account is MediSage, right?
Right.
So they can see your account and see what you're doing, what you're playing, how much you've spent, etc., etc., etc. And they can, I'm sure they can see what the distribution of gameplay is across the different modes and different activities that players can do.
Right. And I assume that if they're a business, they wouldn't do anything that's not in the best interest of what their player base is doing.
Absolutely.
So
I agree.
To me, it's just like a telltale of that. And the other part that like some people posted some comments from some people in the CN community, and I posted this. People will take one comment from somebody in the CN community and say, this is what the CN community thinks. And I'm like, that's one person. But anyway, that's just a whole nother, but this one person from the CN community said, he made a good point that Genshin has had events that were difficult. And Yujiro made this point a couple days ago. They did. And if you notice, they haven't brought some of those events back because I think they were testing the player base to see like if they would do the harder, because what the event was is you can make the event harder for yourself. Like it was like apply these debuffs to yourself, right? And when I saw that, I knew also the other part that people are not realizing is that maybe Genshin isn't good at in-game content. I'm on that boat as well. Like I don't think they're particularly good at it because these events had these debuffs, and it's like I don't want to play a harder mode where you say why, because people say, oh, I'm going to use my artifacts. Well, you're going to make a hard mode, and then what the Genshin's going to do is you're going to say, oh, you can't sprint. You can't use your burst at all. That's their idea. That's been their idea in these events of making it harder. They literally shut off your abilities. So what's the point of artifacts anyway if you can't use the burst? If you can't sprint? If you can't, like this, they basically, their idea that I've seen from them in terms of making harder content is basically turning your abilities off. Like you can't sprint, you can't use abilities, you can't use your E but so many times, you can't, and I think that speaks to a larger issue that I have is like why I'm not seeing more games borrow some of the more successful in-game loops, because it seems like a lot of games default to, when it talks about harder difficulty, they default to higher HP, higher damage, turning off your abilities and immunity phases. These four things to me are not, they're not, what do you call it? Is it artificial difficulty? And maybe Greg, you can speak to that. Like, have you felt like the difficulty has been based on mechanics, or you felt like the difficulty so far has been based on artificial? Yeah.
Well, I mean, in Genshin, it's just like it's never hard, but in other games, and this is I have this argument so much with people about fucking Dark Souls and Elden Ring. It's just like the reason why people. I'm talking about the pivot, but
no, you good.
We all talk. I feel like we're talking about too much Genshin, so I'm about to pivot real quick.
Gotcha. No,
same topic though. It's the problem with difficulty, that the difficulty that people want, and the type of difficulty they think people want, because everybody always says the same thing about Elden Ring. Hey, put an easy mode in. It's so simple. Just put an easy mode in. But when you put
feel like Elden Ring needs an easy mode.
It does not need easy mode. It does not need easy mode.
I agree with you. You don't need easy mode. That's not a game issue. should be easy.
Because if you put an easy one in Elden Ring, what do you think they're gonna do? What's the solution here? What they're gonna do is they're gonna make the game easier overall. All the mechanics they're gonna simplify the game, and then they're gonna put it in a fucking hard mode where all the enemies have like 20,000 HP.
Yeah.
And that sucks so much. They did it to Fire Emblem, and I literally can't play Fire Emblem anymore because of it. So what they did was they moved all the difficulty modes down. So the hard mode is actually normal mode. So if you select hard, you're getting normal, and if you select easy, you're getting like this like baby difficulty.
Oh man.
So it's like, okay, the only way to get a challenge is to play Lunatic then. But if you play Lunatic, it's almost impossible to play the game normally because the enemy stats are so inflated that's like, okay, you want to play this Lunatic game on Lunatic? All right. You have Frederick, you have Robin. Those are the only characters you can use. All these other motherfuckers, they're not good enough. you can't use them. And it's the same thing with like, that's what people don't want easy mode for Elden Ring because it's going to happen. Like right now, Elden Ring is balanced to where you can use pretty much any weapon in the game, right?
Yeah.
It still might be a little harder than others, but the game is balanced. It's very, very, very much so balanced among almost everything. Yeah, some things are cheesier, some things, but everything has a spot in the game.
Yeah.
If they would have made the overall game easier and then add a hard mode, you're gonna get this weird meta where it's like, okay, you want to beat Margit? All right, you have to go to this tower and get this one staff that's stronger than you. And
right.
that's what hard modes in every game is devolved into, and I hate it. I don't play Fire Emblem.
The de-evolution of player choice.
Right,
yeah.
And it's like
yeah.
It's like it's what's happening in Genshin. They know who's playing what. They know they can look at the stats and say, hey, only 15% of people are playing Foul Abyss. Let's not cater to them.
Right.
Let's cater to the people who just log in and do the quests and talk to the people. That's why all the new stuff is for for everybody, and there's no problem with that. But
and to conclude on Genshin, I thought it was. Hold on, Greg. Hold on, Yuzuru. Before after the interview, I thought it was a horrible interview, but did it not make me not want to play Genshin anymore? No, because for me, Genshin already doesn't take that much time for me. So it's like, for me, it's like, okay, I can see this to the end and I can still do whatever I want because I literally only spend 30 minutes in Genshin. Now, for a person who just started, they have to make that decision of like, okay, am I going to go down this path of, because you're going to spend more time. You got to clear all those quests and fucking hangouts and, is that something?
One more hangout left.
Yeah. But yeah.
I will never get those done. I'm not going to lie. Never going to happen.
Yeah.
They're a pain in the ass, but just getting all those gems. I need Amiko, man. I need the gems. I can't just leave them. 60 gems on the table, no, sir.
But yeah.
I get it. I just I don't have patience.
Something I didn't mention, but I want to bring in because we're talking about difficulty a little bit is
hold on. Let me chime.
Oh, go ahead.
And you, not to get off the subject, but Tower Fantasy does a horrible thing at making difficulty. Let me explain.
Okay.
Player choice goes out of the window when you nerf. Let's say, for instance, vote. They'll nerf vote by 60% in an operation where 3 of your weapons are vote weapons or 2 of your weapons are vote weapons. They do a horrible, and then they'll say, okay, we're going to nerf vote and normal damage. It does a absolute horrible, making difficulty balanced. It makes it horrible.
Yeah.
Because it takes player choice away.
Right.
Just like what he was talking about, it takes players' choice away. So if you've built all your vote weapons or all your ice weapons, they're totally irrelevant in this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, people don't give Genshin enough credit for that because they never nerf. Pretty much, I don't think they ever really have nerfed a certain element. I mean, certain enemies at the end might have resistances, mostly to physical damage, but mostly the Spiral Abyss will buff a certain element. For the most part, and Tower Fantasy does that, and it's doubly bad because it's a gacha game. So if you're playing free to play and you're going to invest in like Vault, you just can't do the Vault challenge missions that week. You got to wait till it shuffles into a different element, which some people might be okay with, but some people might feel like that's a little too much. So I get your point there. Definitely, I'm one of my wishes for gaming going into the future is I'm hoping that we see kind of new ideas in terms of how difficulty is scaled, and so that leads me into like No Man's Sky. I saw recently and I know I didn't bring this up, but I'm gonna be brief. Basically, No Man's Sky. I saw like the Internet Historian did a video on it, and I watched the whole thing. And I didn't know the whole story about No Man's Sky, but they have this new update that actually just dropped, and it gives you the ability to pretty much customize the entire game, including difficulty. And I was very interested, but I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on choosing your own difficulty. Because when I usually play a game, I'll pick the hardest difficulty for the most part. But if a game starts and it says customize your difficulty, I'm talking about like all the bits and pieces of the difficulty. I find it to be what's the word, like
overwhelming.
Yeah, it stops me
so-
from actually starting the game.
So
Okay.
I can bring an existing game that I know did that. So Dragon Quest XI has a base difficulty, but there's also something called draconian settings, where it's just for more hardcore people. You can set them at the beginning, and they do all types of different things. Like you can't buy equipment. You can only make your own equipment. Like all types of little restrictions, like 3 pages of them.
Yeah.
And you can set it how you want. And maybe it's something like that. Is that what you mean, or like?
Yes, that's
I-
exactly. And when you told me about that in Dragon Quest, I looked at it and I immediately turned it off. Like I didn't even go into that menu because
of course.
it just kind of like I was like, oh, because if I change it, I'm going to put everything to the hardest difficulty. Because if
Yeah.
I'm not playing the hardest difficulty, I'm always, while I'm playing something, going to have it in the back of my mind of like, yeah, but what would happen if I did this? And it
All
goes,
right,
it goes,
so-
hold on. It goes also goes to the fact that I don't replay any games. So maybe if you're more of a person that replays games, then you'll be like,
You play
okay,
games.
this gives more value because
You've never replayed a game.
only game I've ever replayed is The Witcher.
What? Never?
Never
Yeah, he
replayed a
doesn't.
game.
But
It's
but
done,
this
it's done.
but this is the problem with that. All right, so I gotta agree with Greg on this. Let's say, for instance, you start a game on the hardest difficulty. They're so inflated. I'd rather a game start with its difficulty and you can't move it. All right, so I've played games like Elden Ring. We played Elden Ring on its level. It didn't move, so you kind of know what you're getting. But let's say, for instance, you try that with God of War. God of War enemies are so inflated on the hardest difficulty, the basic characters can almost 1 or 2 tap you.
Yeah, and I found that out the hard way.
So the problem with it is that the game people don't understand how you scale from easy to medium to hard. So what they do is the increase is so high on the highest difficulty, it becomes that meta play where not repeating him, but it becomes that meta play. Like you can only use this, and that's the only way you can clear it, and that's not fun.
Right.
So here's the thing about game difficulty.
It's not
right?
fun.
The thing about game difficulty is that the developers seem to think that making enemies harder just have to do with more HP. But the thing about difficulty in games, this has nothing to do with like things like that. It's about like the experience. Like if I think about like Mega Man, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't think like let's talk about classic Mega Man. I don't know if anybody's played like the original.
Yeah.
Let's say 5 or 6.
Absolutely.
5 or 6 Mega Man games, right?
I've
So
played
in those games,
2 and 3.
excellent. Those are perfect. So in those games, I don't think those games are hard, but I don't think any like changing of the stats will make it any easier because the whole point of the difficulty of that game is that you just have to learn how shit works. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't think how they would make those games more difficult. They just you just have to learn how to play them.
So does it have? Is it's a difficulty in the movement?
The
Like,
difficulty,
or is
the
it in?
difficulty it's in the enemy placement.
Okay.
Right.
Generally.
And I think that's why I respect games like Elden Ring. So
Exactly. The
it-
difficulty
I-
is not in the
as long as you learn the mechanics, where to move or how to do what you're going to do, you can beat it. Is it hard? Yes, it is very difficulty or hard, but it's not impossible. But when you add billions of or trillions of HP to the enemy, it feels like it's like you got to have everything perfect, and that's not
kinda,
fun.
and that's what the developers aiming at. They're kind of missing the point of, because this is the thing, right? There is a certain type of player, and I feel like a lot of these players play Genshin. The type of player that's like, okay, I'm gonna break this game. I'm gonna find the most efficient way to do damage, and
Yes,
I'm gonna do it. And
Yes.
so developers see these people, and they're online. They're very vocal. I don't know why, but they see these people online, like 10,000 damage showcase. Let me see how much damage I can do in one hit, and they're like, oh, okay, so
they got their pocket protect out.
yeah, they're just like, okay, let's create content for these people. Let's make a hard mode where every enemy has a billion HP. So that way, you have to dive into our game and find the most effective way to do the most damage to beat it. And on paper, that is great, but in the whole another way, they're missing the point of why certain games are hard. Now, for certain games, that works, but I would argue for something like Dark Souls, it doesn't work. Like, could you imagine how miserable the game would be if everybody had so much more HP?
Oh, that's a good point.
That's the thing about every enemy in Dark Souls. If you know what you're doing, if you're in the right point of the game, you're not under level, everybody's going down to 2 or 3 hits. Easy. There are no sponge enemies in that game. Either you go down to 2 or 3 hits, or they go down to 2 or 3 hits.
Right.
And it's like,
But somebody going down.
Right.
but somebody's going down exactly. And if you start messing with HP sliders there, it will ruin the game. And that's why people are so against the hard mode in Dark Souls. They see what the industry's doing, and they're like, they better not bring that shit over here. I'll be pissed.
Right.
If
I would have stopped immediately if they did it. I would have stopped immediately. Like I wouldn't have played any more Elden Ring at that point.
Yeah, I'll be big frowny face for many years.
I mean,
Yeah.
and all I think 3 of us in here has played Elden Ring. I feel like it was a great game. The issue I had with was all the the PvE stuff. I understand them balancing stuff for PvP. I get it. But the nurse that came to PvE was a little much for me, and that's why I stopped playing the game.
Oh yeah, I got the platinum before they started nerfing stuff, so I don't know about that. But my problem with the game is just it's like almost every Souls game. It's very front loaded.
Yeah.
It's cool. Like I feel like towards the end of the game, it kind of fell off.
But I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed the hell out of the game.
Oh, of course.
I feel like it was probably like it was the best Dark Souls game or that type of game that I've ever played.
Did you take your experience with Elden Ring? Did you go back and play the original Dark Souls?
Yeah, but Elden Ring just hit different. For me, Elden Ring just hit different, man.
They're 2 different games, but
I don't know. I enjoyed it. Not just the playing of the game. The customization was better. The weapon choice. It just felt. Listen, man, it felt good.
Right.
I don't know why it felt better than any of the other ones I've ever played.
It does feel better, but
even though the role is a little awkward, the role didn't feel like awkward in that game. It felt good.
Right. But just hear me out. Just keep in mind that Dark Souls is many years older than Elden Ring. Just try and play it. It's really good. Like I promise you, it's really good.
Which one do you recommend, Greg?
Honestly, if I were to rank all the Souls games, I would put Elden Ring like 3rd or 4th. I would still put Bloodborne, the original Dark Souls, and maybe even second, and probably even Sekiro above Elden Ring.
I did play Sekiro. I haven't beat it.
But I have no love for Sekiro.
But
you know what? This is an important time to go back to the topic that brought us here, right?
Yeah.
You can't have a discussion about difficulty without talking about Souls games. We do have a friend who we play on PlayStation with who loved the environment and the atmosphere of Souls games, but didn't like the difficulty. And he was actually able to beat Elden Ring and then went back and, like you said, Greg, played Demon Souls, got the Dark Souls trilogy, played through all of those, played through Bloodborne, and then would not play Sekiro. And the reason is
it's different.
All of those games are like very much RPGs, where you can go and get a weapon, you can farm levels, and you can make yourself strong enough for whatever content or challenge you have to face in the game, or stronger than if you have the time, right, to overlevel yourself.
All right.
Sekiro is a skill-based game.
Yes.
Sekiro is a skill-based game. So,
right?
hold on.
Here's the thing about Sekiro, right? Sekiro is a puffer fish because Sekiro it puffs itself up. It's like you gotta learn how to play me. It's so hard, but it's not hard. I promise you, it's not hard. It's like Dance Dance Revolution.
So that's the problem. Everybody says that Sekiro is a skill based game. It's a counter game. It's a game based around countering. So once you learn how to counter, the game becomes simple.
Yeah,
that's the problem with the game because you only need one skill.
That's the point of the game, though.
Right, but
that's not everybody.
And I get that, but I feel like to me to just learn how to counter, because they've made fighting games. That fighting game that came out recently that our other friend Ace liked, it was the same game.
Sifu
and what you call are the same game. Yeah,
they're not.
Game. They're counter. Not. The game is based upon countering.
I mean,
because you can dodge your way through Sifu. You can dodge your way through Sifu. You can't dodge your way through Sekiro.
Everything else in Sekiro, the story, the levels, like, bro.
I know that like, all the people that I know that are good at Sifu is counter. All like they had to put it easy in, which I totally disagree with, because they should have just left it where it was at. So the people that you probably see dodging through it probably are on easy or whatchamacallit mode, but everybody I've seen to play it on hard, they're countering.
True.
And
true.
I mean,
part of that is because of the way that the game is structured.
Still only two skills.
And
for me, it's boring gameplay. For everybody,
strong disagree.
Different. I mean, and
Sekiro's boring.
Right. And I'll tell you why.
It's boring to me.
Every action game, that's the basis of them. Attack, dodge, block, parry, counter. Like, that's all of them.
Yes, but that's more than one skill. That's more than. But it's more than just counter. It's more than just counter. I feel like
Mario's bad. You just
Sekiro, counter attack.
Well, that brings me to another point, though. I think that's what makes. I know. Not all of us have played Final Fantasy 14, but what made Final Fantasy 14 different, and I know it's turn-based, it's more like, tab targeting, but it was like position-based and also rotation-based. And I don't see many games going. I feel like you can do rotation in an action setting, but I don't see anybody that's ever tried. Like with Final Fantasy, let me explain. Like there's all these things happening, and Final Fantasy is. Remember we played Ghost of Tsushima, Venom, in that hard level. And you know how it's just like all this stuff on the ground. You have to like watch where you're standing. You had the arrows coming down and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's
why I said it was. That's why I said it was most like Final Fantasy 14, because I felt like I had to watch my position, and then I had to hit a certain move set rotation, right? Because you're trying to get that big damage off. You're trying to say, okay, I'm going to counter this guy, then I'm going to go and hit this guy, like square, triangle, try to get my heavy attack off. That's how Final Fantasy 14 felt. And to me, that is the pinnacle of like rotation base, when you have to get cooldowns. Yeah, you have to get a certain you have to get the right rotation off in that time that you're in that position. That's to me in addition to the counter block gameplay that I haven't seen mesh yet, and I wonder why. Like sometimes, because it's just like I don't think it's impossible to make in with the action game, and I mean I think I'm kind of in the middle with counter gameplay. Like I can see where it can become, a little daunting, but also I have felt that rush of like, okay, like Sekiro was fun for me. Like I had a lot of fun with it. I didn't beat it just because I got my ass kicked, and I just haven't trial and errored my way. Like I remember I was on that monkey fight, right, Venom, and I was dying a lot, and then you saw me play and you were like, oh, you got to do this, and I haven't figured that out yet. But like I'm still, that's what prevents me so far from getting through it, because it takes me a longer time in trial error than like the person who's used to playing trial and error games so far, so I'm just not that experienced, right? So it's gonna take me longer to beat it. But I do get that that rush of like, okay, like I felt like there was moments in the game where I wasn't progressing because I kept like, once you figure out an area, I kept going around and like, yeah, I know how to beat all this stuff in here now. Like counter, boom, I know what you're gonna do. I know what you're gonna do, and I was like, wow, I really learned this whole area, and I felt a good, what is that word when you like you the my brain was getting all that good stuff. Yeah, like
Dopamine.
Dopamine, yeah. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
I was getting it.
Not to get off the subject, I do want to ask about that CG Project Red because I heard nothing about it.
Okay, yeah.
When y'all have time.
I was trying to figure out how to get back to that because we were going down this path. But
Well, I'm asking because I didn't hear anything about it. I was psyched about that when they initially said it a long time ago, and I never expected anything come about it. But they said that the multiplayer is coming. I mean, does anybody have any information on this?
yeah, we'll talk about that. One question to lead me into that is Venom and Greg. I guess because you guys, I mean, you played it too, Zero. Did y'all expect that Cyberpunk would get a sequel?
No,
I mean, it's old enough.
no, I didn't think we'd get a sequel.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
It's old enough. I mean,
Yeah, because of the sales. Yeah.
I
Because
mean,
it sells, yeah, okay.
well, the reason why I didn't think it would get a sequel is the launch was horrible for a lot of people. Like
yeah,
I had
but people, you know,
I had
they have
glitches,
short memories.
but the thing is, I love the game even with the glitches. Like I liked Cyberpunk. I was a fan of the aesthetics. I was a fan of most of the parts of the game. Even if it came out in a broken state, like it's games that have came out in a broken state, that doesn't mean they're bad games. That means they need to just have some work done to them. Prime example, I know games that are horrible that came out and they never was fixed really or never got better. Anthem being one of those games. But I didn't feel like it was on. I knew that it could be something way better than Anthem ever was.
Right.
But did I have any expectations? Once they went through everything they went through, I didn't think CD Projekt Red was going to do anything else with it, to be honest.
So I'll give you this is my real reaction. I'm giving you guys my real reaction to this news. When Venom sent it to me and I saw the different projects and I saw the first thing I saw was Cyberpunk is getting a sequel. My first thought was, well, how much did it make, right? Because again, I was like, okay, well, I guess the sales, because the reputation kind of was not where it needed to be. Even though the game, I would say now is in a playable, like a state where everyone can kind of say it's pretty much playable and good to go. And I saw the sales. It was like they said they sold 84 million copies between Witcher and Cyberpunk, right? And so Cyberpunk, I think, was like 65 million copies. So I just did some quick math. I did 65 million times.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I did 65 million times the price. And what was crazy is I think I got something like, I don't quote my math, but I think I got like $1 billion or $2 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so because I'm a degenerate and I compare everything to Genshin, I was like, well, Genshin made $6 billion in 6 months. If I'm the finance officer for CD Projekt Red, I'm like, why are we doing this, right? Because you can make the opportunity cost is so much greater that like, and that's where I'm getting. Hold on, I'm getting somewhere. So then when I watched the video that he sent me, they literally put a all call out to create a mobile game. And I was like, I knew it. I was like it just made so much sense. I was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna do Cyberpunk 2, but we're also gonna try to make this money with this mobile game. They didn't even have any information on the mobile game. They don't even have anybody to make it yet. They were actually like putting out like, we need somebody to actually help us make this. Like they're looking for a studio to make it. And I thought that was interesting that they're now getting into the mobile market. And then they mentioned Witcher 3. I know, stop me if you see where I'm going with this. They mentioned Witcher 3, the next one. They're going to have a saga single player series, and they're coming out with a multiplayer game, which I think is significant because you're coming out with a new saga, but you're also coming out with a multiplayer game, which tells me, this is my conclusion. I say all this to say, I think this multiplayer game is going to be microtransaction hell. What do you guys think?
Yeah, the sales, it was the reason why we thought Cyberpunk would have a sequel. 65 million copies sold is an insane amount for a single player action game like that.
Yes.
Like, I don't think I can even think of one that sold more. To put it in context, when Elden Ring came out and started selling like crazy, I was surprised just because I know it has a core audience, which is in the millions. They've won multiple game awards in the past, right?
Yeah.
It's not a niche game, but not everyone plays those games. It's not a game that's played en masse. So when Elden Ring sold so much, I went back and looked at sales of the Souls games. And I think they totaled up to that point. So before Elden Ring, they totaled about 39 million, to put that in context.
Yeah.
And yeah, so The Witcher itself sold whatever it sold, 30 million-ish.
They
around
sold
there,
20 million more since.
Yeah, and its sales have gone up, obviously. And then Horizon, for comparison's sake, the first game sold 40 million copies. So up until that point, the single Horizon game had outsold every Dark Souls game put together.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
they brought out the sequel to Horizon, and they brought out Elden Ring. And Elden Ring absolutely shat on Horizon. And I just couldn't understand how that had sort of switched up so much, right?
Yeah.
So for Cyberpunk to have sold 64 million copies, which is a huge amount for that type of game, I'm interested to see what the Elden Ring sales are at to date. That's as good as you can expect for a game like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that is more than Zelda, for example. Probably more than any Zelda game. And if you look on down all of the like similar action adventure RPG games, I wouldn't be surprised if that tops the lot at that figure. So on the one hand, you're right. Sure, Genshin Impact sells more. Oh, it makes more money, I should say. But you don't.
But this
if everyone had that mentality, then all they would make is gacha games. And at that point, then you're competing against other gacha games, and you lose some of the value of being at the top of your genre.
Let me chime in real quick. So, I know that Genshin actually made $6 billion in 6 months, but like, first thing is it's a gacha game. It's a gacha game, so that means every 20 days they get a revenue that comes in for 6 months, where Cyberpunk's not going to get that. Is it going to have microtransactions? I think it is.
No, I'm saying they're working on a mobile game.
Right, but
so
hear
for
me
me,
out.
not that they're not going to do.
Hold on, hear me out.
Go ahead.
Hear me out. Cyberpunk was the first. That was its first experiment with coming out with a Cyberpunk on this Watchcom. So they're just getting warmed up. They had already did The Witcher, but this Cyberpunk was the first thing that they had did. So to make $2 billion on your first venture out like this, I see them being 4 to 5 more Cyberpunks, because this was a good start for the name Cyberpunk. Prior to that, Cyberpunk name hadn't sold no records like this. It was nothing. It was, you look at Cyberpunk 10 years ago, and it was just talk. It was what everybody else wanted. So they're just getting warmed up, and they made $2 billion. What you think 2 gonna do? What do you think 3 is gonna do? What do you think 4 is gonna do? They're just building their money so they can make a better Cyberpunk in the future. CD Projekt Red understands that you gotta crawl before you walk. They started here with their first Cyberpunk. I see 2 and 3 and 4, just like Witcher. They made Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 and Witcher 3, and it sold, and it's gonna have microtransactions just like The Witcher did, but I don't think it's gonna be hell. The mobile game will be.
No, Witcher didn't have no microtransactions.
They had expansions, and they had ways that you could buy the Watchcom. Yes, you did. It wasn't microtransaction hell. It was like they had updates, because I remember this. It was like they're like Destiny 2's packs. If you wanted, certain content after, I think it was like the extension, which you did.
They just had 2 DLCs. That's it.
Yeah. Well, the DLCs, and then you could buy like little weapon packs in the DLCs, but they did have something, and I think that's where they're gonna go at with the Cyberpunk. But they're building it up. They may have a couple things you buy, but the mobile version, it's gonna be transaction hell. if they make a mobile version of whatever they're making on mobile. But I think that they're building their brand for Cyberpunk to be its own separate entity, and I don't think it's going to be that bad. That's just my opinion, because you did pretty good on the first one.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I just think I see that most of these companies are going to get into the mobile, maybe even gotcha. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah,
they're going to get into that to fund because
their games. Yes, I agree.
Cyberpunk making 2 million is a lot, but when Genshin is making 6 billion, not saying they're going to make as much as Genshin because Genshin kind of struck lightning, but I kept sitting here saying every company is going to try to get in on this, and I feel like I'm seeing it. Like I'm seeing that come true with them getting into mobile, and then Witcher being one of my favorite single player games, and then now they're adding a multiplayer game, which is not the same as the new Saga that they're doing, which I feel like is such an important distinction because I feel like if you tie the multiplayer to the single player game, it's less likely to have this predatory microtransaction hell. But now that the multiplayer is separate, it's like, who cares what you do with it? Because the people who play The Witcher are going to play 1, 2, 3. They're going to play 4, 5, 6. They might not even touch the multiplayer one. So
yeah,
it's
the multiplayer. What?
The Witcher is coming out with a multiplayer. The Witcher game.
Yeah.
And they're remaking Witcher 3 for PS5.
I strongly disagree with that because you have diehards. In every one of these genres, you're gonna have diehard people that are gonna play it regardless.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying
and
in terms of their reputation, they're gonna say what they're gonna say is, yeah, the Witcher multiplayer, yeah, it's pay to win, but it's okay because the Witcher single player is still there. Like 4 or 5, you don't have to play it. They're gonna say we've maintained, we haven't touched the holy grail of what it is. We're gonna give you 4, 5, and 6.
Right, but
you pay for it one time and that's it.
But microtransaction hell didn't just come from them; it came from the new Diablo game as well. See, everybody forgets what the new Diablo game did. It was one of the most predatory things that has ever been done in gaming.
I think all companies are going to do this.
Yes,
but I'm just saying I'm seeing it manifest, and now I'm seeing the game, and now it does bring into question for me because y'all know I love multiplayer and co-op. I should be excited to hear a Witcher multiplayer game. Like that should be number one. That's one of my favorite games. I could play it with my friends now. But I didn't feel that excitement because I can see clearly the strategy is mobile in this multiplayer game are going to fund the other ventures. You're making 3 more Witcher games, 1 more Cyberpunk game, and a entire new IP. So for me, and they're trying to develop I don't know, Venom, if you got the details of, I couldn't figure out what they're doing with their engine. Because it seems like they have their own engine, but they're also using Unreal 5.
They're switching to Unreal 5. That's why the Witcher remake is coming first. I'm pretty sure the Witcher remake is going to be in Unreal 5, and then that they're going to use that as the basis for making all the rest of these games. Even the Cyberpunk game, it might not use the same assets, but they'll have had their first experience with Unreal and can use that to do what they need to do in Unreal Engine 5 to make the Cyberpunk game.
Yeah, so
they're not going to be using the engine that they used for Cyberpunk and Witcher 3 again.
So the announcement made me kind of weary, I guess. I wasn't as excited. I don't know, Venom, how you felt about it, if you just were indifferent or... But because of the way they laid it out with this multiplayer, what really got me is they said, "Oh, we're gonna Witcher multiplayer," and then they said, "Oh, we're coming out with Witcher 4, 5, and 6 as well." I'm like, why are they separate? Because in my mind, I'm gonna play the single player and then I'm gonna hop into multiplayer.
Oh,
But
but it's for the exact reason that you were saying in terms of the market. The market is split on these kinds of things. There are people. You can just look at us as an example, right?
Yeah.
I'm not really a big multiplayer gamer guy.
right,
There's a few multiplayer games that I play, but then there are people who play exclusively multiplayer games.
right,
I walk into a classroom. Some of my students sometimes ask me if I play games. I say, yeah. What do you have? Which console do you have? I tell them. And then they're like, do you play Fortnite, sir? No. Do you play Multiverses, sir? No. Do you play... And they just go through all of these games that they play. A lot of them are free-to-play games, which makes perfect sense if you're a parent with teenage kids.
right.
And they reel off all of these games. Call of Duty, Warzone. No. GTA Online. No. I don't play these games, right?
Right.
And then they get to a point where they can't even name any more games.
Right.
They can't name the games that I'm playing, and I
Right.
play a lot of games a lot of the time. So I think I think the market has sort of realized that, like, Halo can come out and have a separate multiplayer and single player campaign. I think the most recent one dropped without the campaign, right?
Yeah.
And Call of Duty has come up with, they've separated their game up. I actually kind of want 2K to do this. I would love that. If 2K separated their games into different things.
I've never
if
actually
they
heard
made
that idea, but yeah, that's crazy.
And if you think about it, they might even make more money from it that way.
Like this is
It
just,
might even
this
make
is
more
just
money from it.
a single player basketball experience, and then this is
Yes.
the online version game that you can buy.
Well, my career, my
Yeah.
team, and the single player basketball experience.
That's
My career,
a
my
crazy
team, etc.
idea. So you think
You
this
split it
strategy,
up.
this overall corporate strategy, is the way to go?
In terms of,
I think so.
in
Yeah.
terms of making money, I'll let you go, Greg. In terms of making money, yeah, because now you don't have one game with everything in it like 2K.
Yeah.
You have 3, 4 games, 5 games.
Mm.
Each one of those is sold at a certain price point.
I guess
And-
my initial shock feeling is because I know that I want to play the multiplayer, and I know that it's going to be so much worse because it's not tied to, you're not tying those two markets.
Well,
I wouldn't
why does it
assume
why
that.
does it have to be
Sorry.
worse?
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't assume that just because.
Why does it have to be worse? Because they
Ghost
won't
of
have,
Tsushima.
because they're not going to have those single player guys. Like, they're not going to have people that are going to care. Like, the people who don't want the microtransaction part of it, they're going to go play the single player version and be done with it because they want the Witcher experience. Once they're tired of the multiplayer one, like, once they see it hurts them in any way, once they see the predatory nature, they're going to just not touch it at all. Like, I look at, like, the case in point, like Venom. He plays multiplayer stuff, but as soon as, like, he's out. Like, but for me, I stick with these things and try to see him through the multiplayer because I want a multiplayer experience. And it just speaks to, I feel like they're going to go hard in the paint with the predatory practices of these multiplayer games. I just feel that way. I'm not sure, but the way, when I looked at it, it just makes sense to go hard because it's not like, if the multiplayer is predatory, it doesn't stop the people from getting the experience that they want. Like, for example, if 2K did that, right, and my career has been getting worse every single year, it costs $100. Like, it started off, you pay $100 to get the professional version of the game, and then you spend $10 to build your player, and then it became $20. All the way till now, it's $100 extra to build your player. If you unless you want to grind it, and then the grind is become unbearable, right? So they've gotten worse. So if those two games were split off, if you had a 2K where it's just you play single player and then the 2K we have multiplayer, Venom wouldn't care how bad the like, nobody would speak out. Like, Venom, like, he would just laugh it up, like, okay, well, I'm playing the single player version. It doesn't affect me. I just spent $50 for the game and that's it. And the multiplayer people would continue to spend the money because they spend money anyway. And they will continue to, like the people in 2K right now, they're starting to complain about it a little bit, but they're going to still play competitive. They're going to still play, because the people who play multiplayer mostly don't even play a lot of games. They like most of the multiplayer. I'm actually unique in that way, that I play multiplayer and play a lot of games. Most people play multiplayer, they only have 1 or 2 games downloaded on their system. Call of Duty, 2K, like they Multiverses and Smite, like they don't play.
Fortnite.
They don't play a whole bunch of games. So they're complaining, but the company knows they'll be back. Like there's no power in it. And so kind of what's been saving us is the single player guys going, or the single player leaning audience going, this is shit. Like, and that's what I felt when I saw it, I guess. I'm not sure if I'm right, but that's what I felt.
But I would push back on that by saying that actually, whichever part of the game has the microtransactions is what dictates the game. So by separating, if they don't separate it, the single player players do not have any power over what happens as a whole. Like I feel like as a single player or more so non-online player, I've been forced out of 2K, not the other way around, right? The fact that I play offline has just meant that they don't care about me.
Right.
So by separating it, I don't think it's going to have the effect that you think. Sorry, if it stayed together, I don't think it would have the effect that you think. It would just mean that the multiplayer side that makes more money would dictate things on the single player side. In the same way that we just mentioned with Elden Ring.
I see it that now that CD Projekt Red is leading this charge and doing this, that it was affecting. Like they don't want to hear the same arguments from the communities. You see what I'm saying? Like, because if it really was that way, now they're saying we can have our cake and eat it too. I can have Venom. Because like you said, you would play 2K if it didn't have any of that. And that's...
Yeah.
It just takes I don't see any whatever the Witcher multiplayer comes out with. I don't see this outcry. I don't see it being the same, because the people are going to say, well, as long as it don't touch 4, 5, and 6, I don't care.
Yeah But then I don't know if the multiplayer is... I think the mobile game is definitely going to be disgusting. I don't know if the multiplayer will be... It just depends on how they decide to set it up. Like, for example, a lot of people say Avengers is a bad game, which is fair. There's no pay to win in Avengers. There are microtransactions, but they're all cosmetic. Ghost of Tsushima, which I have played, a lot of the multiplayer, there's no...
It's virtually none.
There's no microtransactions at all.
That's what I was going to say. I kind of feel like... I feel like you're trying to jump in the gun, because going back to the original, should single player and multiplayer be separate? From my point of view, like just ignoring any bad business practice. Hell yes, this shouldn't even be an argument. Like it's crazy, because multiplayer. Oh shit, multiplayer started off as it got kind of a bonus add-on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we made this one-player game, and you know what? Let's include an extra map for you and your friends to fuck around with. But it's gone so far beyond that now. It is literally its own game.
Yeah.
So I don't think it can continue to go forward where you have the single-player guys who are already in crunch mode for everything. It's like, hey, do multiplayer too, and it has to be as good as this game, which is like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
It has to be separate going forward. But
that's very interesting when you lay it out like that. That it's always been going down this path. Like this is this is the crux of where it splits.
Like me personally, I've been like, as soon as I saw like, what was it, like Overwatch, I was like, yes, this is it. This is what you need. Just multiplayer game. There's there's no pressure to put on a half-assed campaign. Because even like Call of Duty, like games like Call of Duty,
they've even started doing it. They were kind of the first. They have Warzone, now they have.
Even back in the day, it was like, but back in the Modern Warfare days, people bought Call of Duty, and 90% of them just played the multiplayer. They had a campaign in there because it's a game. It has to have a campaign, and it was shitty. It took like 2 hours to complete. This is like, okay, I'll just break away from it.
So is the question that you think that the multiplayer is going to suffer in the new Witcher game?
I think it will. I know that I am jumping the gun. That's how I feel. I think that when when the games that tie the single player to the multiplayer, there's this extra. First of all, it gives you somewhere to go if the multiplayer is predatory. Like you can just play the single player and not even touch it. But if a game is just multiplayer, it's like that's all the game is. So if it's predatory, you just put it down. And so it's like I feel like the way they set it up speaks to how and I think you're right. I think it speaks to how the market is going to go because I mean I don't know how bad the multiplayer is going to be. I just feel that way. I have no evidence of that. It could be fine. Like they could only do. It makes me laugh though, because like, why would you? Like, I can't see them losing money. Like it's just like no.
Like Venom said before, it's a case by case basis.
Like with Witcher 2, you can sell weapons. Like there's so many weapons in Witcher. Like I just don't see why they would intentionally not make the money.
Right? It speaks to people's mindsets are different because when somebody brought up microtransaction, I've noticed you went right to the bad ones. Whereas my mind, I just went right to the good. I was like, oh shit, transactions. Okay, so you got like Overwatch, League of Legends, Smite, Multiverses, tons of games that are just like.
So the big question here is people going forward in the future that want to play multi games going to suffer more than single player people?
I think they already do.
No.
I think they already do. I mean,
no, they suffer now, but I mean like exponentially. So when you look at games like Genshin, or you look at games like Tower Fantasy, and then you look at games like Elden Ring, and then you look at
what do you mean by suffer?
Suffer, I mean by
prices.
Yeah, like
mental,
they get super predatory. So all the games that you can play with your friends or have fun with your friends, is it going to be this thing where it's going to get so inflated that these companies are literally just doing microtransactions?
I think we're already there. I just think that it's not in every game. I do like you have like we spoke. We have your Ghost of Tsushimas. You have your multiverses. I don't think it's. I mean, multiverse. I don't know. I felt like
here's the thing about multiverses. It's not predatory, but it can be if you're impatient.
Yeah, but
multiverses is like,
and that's a nice way to say it, but that didn't exist before. Like now you give me this thing where I have to be patient. Like it's like a new.
Here's how I view games like Multiverses and League of Legends, right? So if you want to play completely free, no money out your pocket, okay, cool. You're gonna have to, you have to grind a little bit, and I feel like that's cool. If you want, because you have the option to play for free for no money.
Yeah.
So if you decide to spend even $20, all these games have like a starter bonus pack, which will give you a little boost, so that you'll never have to worry about paying again if you just pay regularly.
Right.
And I just feel like that's a good compromise because you have to keep in mind that a lot of people play League for free completely.
I'm glad you said compromise because there is another side to that too, where the developers are trying to. I think gaming they are trying to make up for development is expensive. Like Venom sent me, Genshin is one of the most expensive games ever created at this point. And I do agree with you there. I think getting down to it, I'm a little bit traumatized at this point where it's like, because we talk about multiverses. The first time I got into multiverses, I wanted to play a character. It wasn't on the rotation. And I had the first thought of like, oh, now I'm looking in the battle pass, like, do I buy this character or not? So for me, it's anytime that I'm forced to think about the option to purchase, it's like you don't even have that in a single player game. You just buy the game and you play it. There's no question of like, should I buy this?
And that's why I say it's just like, because I was like that when I played League. Right now, Multiverse is a little different. Only has 10 characters. But when I started playing League, it had like 80 characters, and it's the same deal. Yeah. It's like you can't. It's free to play, Don't you're not spending any money, but there's a free rotation. So every week, 7 characters are free,
Right.
and it's a matter of how patient are you. And I feel like it's a decent compromise because if you know, I didn't spend a dime on League, so I waited like maybe 6 months to play every character.
And I guess it's also my history with The Witcher. Like with The Witcher, I'm very specific about how I play the game. And I just have this feeling in the pit of my stomach that I'm going to turn the multiplayer on. They're going to give me this bullshit. I'm going to create my character. They're going to give me like the worst armor in sword possible. And in order for me to be what I want to be, which would probably be part of the bear school and have the heavy equipment with the sword that I want, they're going to say, you want this? You can grind for 3 years, or I guess I've taken that gut punch question to my head so many times.
Hold on now. People don't understand
excellent.
what you're talking about because the Star Wars game came out and did the same thing.
True.
It took like 5 years to play and to get a decent what was the Star Wars game?
It was
called?
Darth
Battlefront.
Maul or something.
Battlefront 2, you have to unlock
yeah.
the
Battlefront
characters.
2. It
Everything
came out,
everywhere.
and if you played for free, it would literally take you 5 years to get it. So that's what I mean when I say suffer. That's suffering. To
This is
play
the thing,
that
right?
game free for 5 years just to get one thing.
what
Another
happened
game.
with that?
Hold on.
Before you move on, what happened with that game specifically?
It got changed.
It got
It
changed.
got changed.
Right.
It got
But
changed.
hold on. I'm finna give you another example. Let's
Mhm.
go to Black
I
Desert.
don't want to.
Hold on. It didn't get changed. Black Desert didn't get changed. They have a mount in the game that will take you 3 years to grind to get. 3 years. It hasn't got changed. So it exists.
Now the question
called
is,
a Karen Waterhorse.
where does Cyberpunk land on that? We don't know, and it is jumping the gun for me to assume that they're going to be more BDO Korean MMO bad than American studio bad.
So
Done.
it happens. It's still there, gentlemen.
So now that you explain the type of game that you're talking about, I feel like I get our discrepancy here. So the
Yeah.
discrepancy is the different types of games we're playing.
Yeah,
Because for me, if I'm playing a fighting game, right, like or something like League, where you're unlocking characters,
yeah,
the feeling where I'm weak, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It doesn't exist because once you get a character, you have that character, you have all the full potential of that character.
Right.
So I'm fine with it. But if I was playing an RPG and somebody told me, "Hey, use this shitty ass sword until you can grind for 2 hours," it's terrible.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting discussion. Different games have different monetization. How do you combat that?
Yeah, and I don't know what Witcher is going to do because that game, just how much I played it, I already know what they're going to do to me. Like I already know.
But this
The swords are
speaks to
so
something-
cool.
what the?
The different bows you can get, the different armor, and the way it changes your tree, the weight limits. Oh, I know they're gonna sell weight limit. You can increase your weight carry capacity. The horses, like
Don't even talk about carry weight because they sell that shit in Korean MMOs so bad.
You know,
It's
you know,
disgusting.
I think the
Yeah,
compromise is
it's
a game like
fucking.
that.
It's trash.
Honestly,
And they sell like 10 pounds for, so you can literally carry 10 pounds more for like 20 or 30 bucks.
and how I
And
would
you need hundreds
Right.
of fucking pounds.
and how I would
Here's my
use
question.
how I would usually combat that is if I create my character, right? Because that's the other thing multiplayer usually brings. You can create your own Witcher, right? So if I create my own Witcher, instead of playing online, I would go play the single player mode where I get everything and enjoy myself until I can deal mentally with the shitty state that I'm in the multiplayer side of things.
So I have a question about the multiplayer, Donna. When you say multiplayer, are you talking about an MMO or like a game where you play like matches? Like what type of
Well,
game are
we
they
don't know.
making?
We don't know what Witcher is going to be, but I assume it would be more of like a MMO type, but not MMO. I think it'll be more like instance based MMO. Like you don't see everybody in the world, but you can like go do missions with each other and stuff like that. I think that's where they might go with it, and they might
Because
add
I feel like-
PvP.
What you're describing seems to be like MMO, which should be on a subscription based thing like Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
And I feel like it would, depending on what type of game they're even going to make, that's what determines the monetization structure. Because it's like Final Fantasy has monetization, but it's all cosmetic. You pay to play the game,
right?
And that's a good way to go about it. I always feel like that's always the best way to go about it because people love to express themselves. And just give them the option. Let them be a fairy or a monkey or whatever they want to be.
Basically,
basically,
my feeling on their multiplayer, the way they announced it, it seems like a prison. Like it's a multiplayer. It's a multiplayer prison. Like you there's no you can't right. But what drives you to play it is that I'm a Witcher fan. I want this, and so when you're in it, there's no alternative. So right, you might as well not play it. And you might as well just only play 4, 5, and 6, right? But the thing is, the company doesn't care if you go play 4, 5, and 6 because it doesn't. Like for instance, if I had the multiplayer and the single player in the same game, right? Like say 4 was multiplayer and single player. If I hated the multiplayer and I turn off the game, I'm not playing the single player and I'm not buying 5. But now that the multiplayer is separate, if you hate the multiplayer, you'll still play 4, 5, and 6. And it's like, it doesn't hurt them for them to make that multiplayer as bad as possible. Because even if you don't play it, there's somebody out there that will spend the money. And they just want them. They just want the people that's going to spend the money.
What's
all right. Let me interject for a second. That's just basically business, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. You sell, and if you're making money, you make money. You not buying it, like me not buying 2K isn't hurting 2K.
Right.
So I just wanted to touch on 2 things. First thing, really, really quickly, this is actually an insane conversation about like mental health in gaming, right? In terms of like, I don't want to victimize you because you obviously buy these games and choose to spend and choose to play and choose to exert energy into these things. You can stop if you wanted to stop.
Right.
But it sounds like your experiences with these other games and the microtransactions and everything like that has been traumatic.
Yes.
And I think that is something that needs to be addressed in gaming in general.
Yeah.
Sure.
Aside from that, I just looked back at the exact tweet for this specific Witcher game, and I think we've gotten it a little bit twisted here. So this specific Witcher game, the one with the multiplayer component, is called Project's codename Sirius.
Yes.
Serious.
They do.
Serious about making that money.
Seriously about getting paid.
They do have a developer.
I'm seriously about getting paid.
They do have a developer. The developer is Molasses Flood.
Yes.
So it's going to be set in the Witcher universe. CD Projekt Red is going to support them in making it.
Yep.
And it says it will differ from our past productions, offering multiplayer gameplay on top of a single player experience, including a campaign with quests and a story.
Oh, okay. I missed that part.
Okay. So it's probably a single player mission where you can jump in and fight a boss with your friends.
But then they're still going to make 4, 5, and 6.
Could be.
Hell yeah.
And then 4, 5, and 6 are separate. Yeah.
So
it could be like Monster Hunter, right? It could be like Monster Hunter since there's a quest and a story. It could be like Avengers in the sense that you team up 4 of you and go and fight whatever you're fighting. We don't know at this point, but I think that with that little bit of extra detail, it kind of frames the context a little bit better for the conversation that we're having in terms of what type of game it will be.
Okay.
Well, I guess that quells a lot of my fears. Because if the multiplayer is predatory,
like, oh no.
because I missed that part. I just kept seeing multiplayer. I'm like, okay, well, what is it going to have single player? Because that speaks to what I was saying. Usually, when you have a multiplayer, there's a single player to balance out the predatory stuff they're going to put in the multiplayer. Where it's like even with Avengers, even though it's cosmetic, right? you can play Avengers as single player, and none of the issues that may pop up with multiplayer will come into play. It's like a balancing kind of thing. So it usually happens. And when I didn't see it, I was just like, oh, they're going to go like fist in, like they're going all the way in, like they're starting off, but they're not. Well, you know, I guess this means they're just not that. I still don't know how bad it's going to be, but you know, that does help. So we've talked about that. We know what's happening with CD Projekt Red. What I want to dash into this and dash out. I wanted to touch on the Mario movie because before this came out, I know it's not a video game. Well, Mario's one of the greatest video games of all time, but you know, I saw so much, and we talked about this a little bit, Venom, yesterday, but I saw so much controversy around this, and I was like, okay, I gotta watch this because like everybody's like making memes about how bad it's gonna be, like what his face is gonna look like, what he's gonna sound like, and I'm like, why do y'all assume it's gonna be bad? And I guess because the first movie was bad, but like I always felt like Mario could be a show or some kind of movie or some other medium. And so for me, I was like, I'm willing to give it a chance because we haven't gotten anything really from Mario. So it's like I would be more optimistic and more, you know, but the internet is relentless. And so I tuned into it. And when I watched the trailer, I honestly was impressed. Like I was really good. I thought it was pretty good.
It was really good.
And I saw people's like, I don't know, I heard the voice, I think I'm gonna skip. And I ended up putting this frustration tweet out to that person who said that, was like, oh my God, just watch the goddamn movie. I mean, like, it's not that bad. Like, it's not like they do a pretty good job. Like, and it's like, I wanted to speak on like the internet's need for something to be like have something wrong with it, or we need to say like it got kind of out of hand. Like
you have to accept it, man. That's just how the internet is. Just hear me out. Just hear me out. Nobody with their shit together. You know what I mean? That's just like it's perfectly happy with every life. Spends their time on Twitter getting mad at movie reviews. Like there's a certain subject of people. They also exist on Yelp. They're all over the internet. Like 1,000 people go to a restaurant, and the one person that comes in there and is having a bad day and it ruins everything. That's the person that goes on Yelp and releases a review.
Yeah.
It's the same way with Twitter. Same thing like Genshin. Billions of people playing shit. The only people who are online
is the 10,000 that had a bad time or they want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
it's how the internet is. So people were waiting for this movie to be bad. Like I've seen it.
Yeah.
But for weeks, people were like, "Yo, I can't wait for this movie to come out. I'm gonna have my rage moment. It's gonna be so cathartic." Great. And it came out. And I was like, "Wait a second, it's good. What can I nitpick? Chris Pratt always sounds like Chris Pratt." It's like that's how it is. It's funny when like something like this happens because the same thing happened with Elden Ring before it came out.
Yeah.
People waiting for years to show this game, and it came out good. People were like, "What? Was just Dark Souls 4?"
Yeah. I feel that.
It's ridiculous.
It got to the point where people were even saying, "I'm gonna watch it in French," and I'm just like, "Okay, all right."
Do you know my my problem with that? If you don't like movies like that, just don't watch it. You ain't got to comment on it. Because for me, I don't watch any cartoon or any anime that was an anime and then turned into real life. I ain't watching it because I know you're gonna shit on it.
I feel
and
that.
I don't want to see it. Dragon Ball trash. Bleach didn't like. I mean,
I've seen some fan made projects though that were really good on all these.
Right. But I'm just saying, for me, I'm not a fan. So you're not gonna get me to go and say, "Oh, well, watch the Mario movie." It's not what I like. I'm good.
Because have y'all seen the Power Rangers? Have y'all seen the Power Rangers fan made?
I'm not going to sit up and comment on it or give these people bad publicity because I don't like it. I'm not going to do that because, like, for me, I like Morbius. They talk shit about Morbius. They said Morbius was the worst thing ever created. I liked it.
Oh yeah, Morbius. Yeah.
Everybody they shitted on Morbius back and forth. Hey, this I liked it.
Yeah.
You see, I feel like people need to literally quit trying to be clickbaity and shit like that, and watch it if you like it, and if you don't like it, don't participate in it. That's
All
just
right.
me, man.
Yeah. Any other last comments on this? So I just wanted to kind of touch on it, but
I don't want to like degrade Jack Black because of him, but that guy's amazing, and when he's involved with something, we know it's gonna be good.
yeah, I'm a huge Jack Black fan. Huge Jack Black fan.
Jack Black is Bowser. Okay.
Did you see? Did you see what he did on Saturday Night? What was it on? Was it Jimmy Fallon?
Nah.
He did the Kumba theme. He like played it on like the little. He has this little instrument, and he like played it, and it was so awesome. You have to see it if you're a fan of Mario. This guy is just Jack Black is just amazing. But yeah, I forget where we're supposed to. Like, I forget the other topics we're supposed to go into. Actually, what else were we going to talk about?
Where's your word up?
That's a good point.
What we had it for. I haven't said anything yet. Yeah, just I think part of it is based on the old film. There is a general culture to want to hate on things in general. But I think the old film was a victim of a few different things that came out at that time where we didn't have the technology to do it yet, but they did it anyway. So even something like, I think I had this conversation before with a few people online about Spawn and how if Spawn had come out, if Spawn comes out today, which they're actually working on, there was news this week that Jamie Foxx wants to play Spawn, and
oh my god,
yes, together.
Yes, please, yes.
They're trying to put together.
Which Jamie Foxx though? Which Jamie Foxx are you gonna get?
Okay, hold on. Jamie Foxx is another one. I'm not a dick red Jamie Foxx, but whenever he's involved in something, it comes out pretty good. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the ghouls in that, like the makeup and everything. We just weren't ready to make a Spawn film, whereas now we could do it with the technology that we have. So, for me,
that was people's opinion because I like the Spawn movie. See,
yeah, I like the Spawn. I like the original Spawn movie too, but they were limited a little bit in their in their ability. I always thought I wanted to see the second one. I wanted them to keep going because I thought the technology would catch up and they would do more than just that one scene. I think they had like one real fight scene in it, and it wasn't really because the cape they had to go around and everything. Like they couldn't do as much of the fighting as they wanted to, like really show Spawn. I think most of it was like a lot of drama stuff in it, which I liked. But I'm all for. Yeah, I love that first Spawn movie for sure. I'm all for it.
I just feel like Michael Jai White played a good Spawn as well.
He did. He did.
I'm a fan of Michael Jai White. I feel like if I seen Spawn, it would be Michael Jai White or someone like him. I just don't see Jamie Foxx as Michael Jai, as Spawn.
He can't fight like
Jai White can. He doesn't have the attitude. When you think about even Spawn's character, he was a badass before he died and went to hell. So for me, it's storyline driven as well as person. When you look at Jamie Foxx, he just doesn't strike me as a badass. He's a great actor. I liked him in Ray, one of my favorite movies that he's ever did. A lot of people didn't like Ray. I loved him, but I just don't see his character like that. You know what I'm saying?
I feel you. I loved him in Django, so I'm hoping I get Jamie Foxx. I liked him in that one, but
I was not a fan of Django. I'm just
feeling myself. No, I thought he had a good performance in that one. I like the ending particularly, and I want to see that kind of stoicism.
There was too many N words in Django for me, bro.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about that, but it's a slave movie. So
it's what's his name?
Quentin Tarantino.
You know he loves to slide 92 N words into his script.
Yeah,
I'm not too much of a fan of Quentin Tarantino. Like people try to talk shit up to me, but I'm not good with it.
He's pretty cool. I think he's done a lot for cinema. in terms of his style. I think he added to the lexicon, but um, I'm excited about it. And I'm excited about the Mario movie. And I showed it to my daughter. She loved it. I mean, I think that movie's going to do really well, and I'm excited for it. But I've actually run out of. I cannot like my Word doc. I didn't type everything down. That's my fault. I gotta do better. Bad Don. But are we missing anything? Did we touch on everything? I feel like
Yeah,
we've talked.
Gotham Knights.
Gotham Knights. Thank you.
I mean,
The one dude they ain't gonna play it.
when you say things, I remember them. Right?
Thanks.
Right.
We gotta touch on Gotham Knights. Okay.
I
Reviews
have
came out.
nothing to say. I have nothing to say.
Reviews. The embargo lifted, and a lot of reviews came out, and a lot of people are saying some are similar things, but some people are saying some really interesting things. Venom, I don't know if you want to start here with, because it's coming out. Updated thoughts.
Yeah, so I think I might have been the first one to spot it. Basically, there was a preview embargo that came up. There was an event in, I can't remember where, maybe Connecticut?
Yeah.
No, wait, they're in Montreal. Sorry, they're in Montreal. So there was an event up there, and they flew in some YouTubers. They also flew in some people that work for various gaming sites and pages, etc., all to play 2.5 to 3 hours of the game. Some got to play multiplayer with either someone that they had gone with or a developer. Others didn't. I think some of the YouTubers didn't get to play multiplayer, but they got like basically 3 or 4 different sections of the game that they got to play through. They started off with the tutorial, which is given to you by Batman, ironically enough, because he's dead in the game. He's dead in the game. He's dead in the game. It's not a Batman game.
We hope.
Can you tell I'm annoyed by the internet?
Well, I'm watching the trailer gameplay right now as you're speaking about it, and don't forget to bring up Valkyrie Elysium too.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
right.
Yeah, so they brought them there. You do a tutorial. You get to do a little bit of open world stuff, which is some of the detective missions that we had spoken about before. One mission I saw had like a hostage, and you had to disarm bombs and take out enemies and stuff. And you could fail the mission. But I think you could also replay the mission. I don't know if that was just something that was there for the purpose of this showing of the game.
Right.
Is everybody playing this besides me and Greg? Is everybody playing Gotham Knights in here?
I'm definitely not playing Gotham Knights.
Yeah. Just me and Venom pretty much from here. Definitely. But it started off as a novelty for me because I'm a huge Batman fan. So I've played all of the Arkham games for better or worse. You know, I thought they were all good, but I pretty much see everything that's Batman. I don't think I've missed anything that Batman has ever been tied to ever. Like, and I really mean that in terms of like movies, video games. I didn't see all of the I didn't read all the comics and stuff because I'm not really a big comic book reader, but pretty much every like I've seen all the original movies, I've played all the games, like, so that's so I'm like kind of biased in that way, but I'm gonna let Venom continue.
It was one of my favorites.
Have you saw the new video? I'm actually watching it right now.
Yeah, it's up. It's up. I'm watching you watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they got to play that, a little bit of open world. They got to play an early part of the Harley Quinn investigation. So they fight against some of her faction members, and then they actually speak to her, and they are the ones that let her know that Batman is dead, right? And they get to see her reaction to it. She has a slightly different response in that conversation based on which of the characters you play as. She obviously knows Nightwing. She doesn't know Robin, for example. So the way that she talks to them is different based on which character you're playing as.
Is it Nightwing Robin? Sorry, I don't watch comic books.
What's the question?
I thought they were the same person.
There's multiple Robins, and one of them becomes Nightwing.
Yeah. So the weird thing is about that, even Red Hood is a Robin.
Yeah.
So all of them are different variants of Robin, which is crazy. But that was what I liked about Red Hood. Red Hood was like the most sinister Robin there ever was. Like
Yeah.
he killed, he was that dude.
Yeah.
The
He's,
problem is that they have dumbed him down so much that's why I don't want to play the game. Because I wanted to play Sinister Robin. Just
you
short
can't,
backstory on that.
can't have a character just busting off heads.
Yeah. He ain't play that Robin ain't play no games. He had pistols. Somebody wasn't making it home, and it was not him.
For sure. And then they played the actual boss fight. So later on in the investigation, once you've figured out where she is and what she's doing and everything, you go and confront her. So they played the boss fight. And I think that could be played in co-op as well. Is there another aspect? Oh, and they played. So I think near the beginning of the game, there's an open investigation that Batman was taking part in when he died, and they basically go and finish that mission off. And that seems to be more detective based rather than action based. So you can do that, and we got to look at the UI while you're trying to figure it out. So you gather up all of this evidence, and then you're trying to open the code to a safe or something like that. And basically, there's like a calendar. There is it a microwave? There's something else. There's 2 or 3 things with numbers on them, and basically you're deciding, based on the evidence you've gathered, what the code is for the safe. Yeah. So you can actually fail these investigations. You can also skip them. So if you're not into investigating all of that, you just want to go and fight stuff, you can just skip to the solution once you've gathered all the evidence, because you have the solution. It's just that you just have to pick the right one. So in terms of not necessarily accessibility, but they give you that option in terms of play style and game style to choose from. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Obviously, people have their various opinions. I don't think anyone really thinks this is going to be the best game ever.
Right.
I hear it's more of like a 3 or a 4 than a 5 out of 5 or a 7 or 8 rather than a 9 or 10. But that's what I kind of expected anyway. I didn't expect it to be the next big.
And I kind of look at this as a proof of concept game, like a foundation game. I feel like I'm supporting the idea, because like we talked about yesterday, Venom, this is a ballsy thing to actually do. Like, I imagine it took them a lot to get them to actually make a Batman related game without Batman in it. Like, a lot of the guys you're trying to sell this idea to are going to shoot this down 9 times out of 10, which is probably why we haven't gotten anything with the Bat family in a long time. And I think really what they're trying to capitalize off of is probably there was a comic book that happened recently that was popular. So they're trying to, that probably what even was the catalyst to even get this, because I think it was the Court of Owls comic book that came out, and apparently that did well, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, look, this comic book did well, you know, Batman recently did well in the box office, so let's, I think we can,
let's kill him.
Let's do it. So I would, like, if you asked me like 3 years ago if this would ever happen, I would say there's no shot. Like, how would you?
I think the problem is that they didn't make it realistic. The problem is that I want to see what would happen if Batman really died. People will be who they are. Like, you taking, basically the most anger-driven character and say, oh yeah, he would use non-lethal weapons now because Batman's dead. It's not realistic. Just like, you would see villains get out of control. I get that, and I think that it would have worked all the time. The problem is what's your story? What happens to people? Like,
it's been said that that's actually the strength. Like, even people that got bored of the combat and stuff like that have said that actually the story intrigues them, that the writing around the characters and the way that they interact when they're back at their base is one of the strengths of the game, probably the biggest strength of the game from what they've played.
Yeah, but
and that's the thing that intrigues them the most.
And I think that a lot of these characters would have became villains.
I
That's
feel
just to
you.
be honest.
I feel you.
Because like Red Hood, without Batman, the only person stopped him from being so what you call him was Batman. So
Yeah.
it's just really crazy now that you make this character non-lethal, and now he has a huge Batman symbol on his chest. Like it's like you put Batman back in, but he's not in because they all are just it's. And I get that they're supposed to be part of the Bat family, but I don't think this is the way a lot of them would have responded.
So yeah,
Well,
I think yeah, I feel you on that. Like where I was going with it is like I think now that this is a concept, and then you talk about the detective system, which really is the part that really intrigues me. I don't know, but I feel like it's not going to hit my expectations in this game. But I feel like if they keep going, like I talked to Venom about this yesterday, like I can already think where they can go with this if this game is just, like if they build them on the momentum of what this game is. Because what I would like to see, and it's wishful thinking to think that this would ever happen for real, but it's just my copium, is you know when it comes to immersive Batman game, what I've always wanted to see is the growth of crime, right? I've always wanted to see that. I talked to Venom about this, and I'll just lay it out really quick. Is that like there's a bank robbery, and say you defeat some of the thugs, but some of them get away with some of the money, and then that money is used for another operation where they steal weapons, and then but there's clues as to why they're doing this and who's the leader, which one of the villains is the leader, and it in these smaller crimes turn into one big crime where say Two-Face is behind it or Joker is behind it, and then you can put them in Arkham Asylum, and then they'll escape from Arkham Asylum, and it becomes this big gameplay loop of you're trying to like really what Batman is, which is he doesn't want to kill these people, but he's just trying to protect Gotham and get them to change. And but I can see from what the system is, it could possibly build into that, and that's what intrigues me about it. The fact that this even got greenlit, and the fact that they're working on a system that at least builds on crime, where it's like, there's different things that happen, there's things that change. You have this dynamic system of crime, and that's where I feel like this game is going to be, like he said, like nobody's expecting it to be the best game of all time. I do think the like I think people are correct when they say the combat might get a little saturated at a certain point in time. But for me, I'm playing. That's what drives me with this game, and I feel like this is a reason why I want people to try this game, because I feel like this is more of a proof of concept. And this completely goes against what I was saying the other day, where it's like I really don't want to buy games that I know is not going to meet my expectations. But that's why I say I'm biased towards Batman, because I really want this from Batman. It's something that if I was making a game, Batman is something that I would try to do. Like it's something. It's one of my favorite IPs. It's the one IP that made me feel like I actually like DC over Marvel before I sat down and realized I don't. It's just like Batman,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I had. That's my 2 cents on it, on the whole thing. If that makes sense. I don't know if I just made any sense at all, but
Yeah.
yeah. That's where I'm at with it.
It's out in a couple of weeks.
It's out in a couple of weeks. I can't wait. And also Valkyrie Elysium. It did drop. I decided not to get it, so I won't be spending. But I wanted to give my final thoughts, because I did play through the demo and complete the demo. I think it's going to be a good game. I just think people have to be careful at the price points they're putting some of these games, because this price is a full price game. And I feel like we're getting a game that should have come out 3 years ago. And that doesn't mean the game is going to be bad or there's not fun to be had in it. But you have this like hub world where you go into these other semi-open linear worlds where there's not any NPCs. And really a lot of these games, this is speaks to a larger topic where I'm starting to get away from games that even talk about apocalyptic events because I feel like it's an excuse to not have any NPCs in the world at all. And so you're just in this barren world walking around fighting monsters, but there's nothing more to it than that. At the end of the day, the Valkyrie, from what I've heard from the Valkyrie Chronicles, the older games, even though they were turn-based, had much more to them than that. And so you're getting
This is based on Valkyria Chronicles,
Yes.
like the turn-based one.
yes,
Really?
yes,
Oh wow! I didn't know they still made games.
yeah. It's made by the same company. They also made Star Ocean.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Valkyrie Chronicles was like their attempt to make a more mature, complicated game, or like a, I haven't played Valkyrie Chronicles. I wanted to, like, I was going to go play Valkyrie Chronicles and then play Valkyrie Elysium to see, but from what I've heard and what I've played, it's another example, kind of what we talked about, Greg, where it's just a lesser experience. Like, you're getting the action combat at what cost, right? You're not getting.
Oh, hold on. Oh, okay. Those are non-lethal.
Yeah, it's non-lethal. It's definitely gonna be.
No, I seen him shot the first guy. I thought it was real bullets because he.
Yeah. So I don't know if you
They
want
go
to speak
down.
to that. What Valkyrie? Have you played Valkyrie Chronicles, Greg?
I played the first one, and I started to play the fourth one, but then I forgot it's one of those stupid games where you have to manually save, and I didn't manually save for many hours, and I just never went back to it.
In that first one that you played, how deep was the game? And when I say deep, I mean, like, did it have NPCs you can talk to, random events, or was it just turn-based, walk around, kill enemies?
It was deeper than that. It's actually very interesting. The first game, it's basically like the game is being told as like a story, so it's like a little book, and it's like a scrapbook. So every event is like a picture that you click on, and it brings you to the event. Now the type of events vary. There's like there's levels, of course, but there's also like little side events and little side conversations. And so it's not. I wouldn't say it's NPCs because it's not really this type of game where you're walking around
Right.
and talking to people. You're more like, oh, look, here's the next event. It's a conversation between all the main commanders. Then you have another conversation between these people, and then there's like a mission, and then But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what type of game the new Valkyrie Elysium is. I never heard of it.
It's like any like old PS3 open world game where you just drop into a place, you walk up linearly, and you fight enemies, and then you go back to the hub world. So it's not more than that. Like, whereas it's crazy. Like, it's like the first Star Ocean, right? Like, yeah, you walk around and fight enemies like Pokemon, right? And you go into like the separate instance. But like in between that, there's like a world there. You know what I mean? Like, there's like a world with like actual people in it that have things to say. So
Yeah, I get your feeling. And while I would say no, the original Valkyria Chronicles didn't have that per se, you still get the feeling of this is a world here based on what they're giving you.
right.
Because I would say it all depends on the presentation. So it's hard for me to to say what it feels like without getting there. Because I say Fire Emblem, right?
Is
Yeah.
is anyone watching my screen? Not to
Yeah,
interrupt. Is any?
Yeah, I'm watching it.
Do you see how clunky he is?
Yeah. All the combat in
Yeah.
the game is
Red Hood looks especially clunky,
yeah.
more
Oh,
so
it,
than the others.
it is bad as far as that goes. Like, his movement is not smooth.
But I did hear that, like, from people who played the game, that the way the game plays with the momentum meter and everything, it actually is. They spoke more to like the enemy encounters than the actual like gameplay being clunky or bad. It was more like I'm fighting the same enemy that has a lot of HP, rather than, oh, this gameplay is actually bad. They were actually really excited about the move sets because I hear that the tree is pretty deep and extensive. I don't know if you got the same thing, Venom, from what you read.
They all have like 3 skill trees with about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 8 or 9 skills in them each, which sort of invoke different play styles. So, for example, who's a good example? They have like a general tree at the start, which gives them like a bit of crit damage and will do 1 or 2 specific things for that character. And then the other 2 are very distinct playstyles. So Robin has a stealth playstyle, and then an elemental based playstyle.
Yeah.
Red Hood, for example, has a throwing based playstyle where you whittle down their health and then you can grab them once they're below 50% health and throw. You can like attach bombs to enemies and throw them at other enemies. And then his other playstyle is based around his guns. And so on for all the different characters.
Yeah,
And then they all have a different like special moves, and then you have your momentum move, which is like your ultimate whatever.
yeah. But Greg, I want you to finish what you were kind of saying though, if you remember.
Right, I kind of remember. It's like there's more to a game's world than just talking to NPCs. If it's done right, because I'm thinking of older RPGs, like not even RPGs, but games that are like level based,
Like action games, like them, like Devil May Cry. But even I've never played Devil May Cry, so I can't really speak on that. But
yeah, Devil May Cry is a little dated. That Devil May Cry is the type of game I was talking about before, where you described earlier, where you just kind of drop into a room and you kill a bunch of enemies.
yes, that's how Valkyrie kind of felt.
And that's how Devil May Cry is. And maybe it's just me. I'm a 30-year-old boomer here, but it's kind of like if the game has the cutscenes, if the cutscenes are good enough, and there's enough to keep you interested between level to level, I don't necessarily mind that type of gameplay.
Yeah,
but I know today people kind of like they want more from games.
yeah.
So I would have to see,
Yeah,
I would have to see, because I know I'm thinking of games like Fire Emblem, where it's just you go from level to level. You can't, not the older one, of course. You just go from level to level, but there's a lot of dialogue in that game between the characters. There's stuff between the levels, and with that dialogue, you get a really good sense of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it reminded me of that game that came out for one of the first games of PS5 that came out. What was that? It was like the one with the different suits. But anyway,
Bugsnax?
no.
Legend of Dragon.
No.
No.
One
That
with the
wasn't
beast,
PS5.
the Beast Wolf suits that nobody bought, and then it came out free to play later.
Early PS5.
Yeah, early PS5. One of the first PS5 games, and it came out free to play. We tried to play it. You have like the wolf beast suits, and
Oh, I get 2 games mixed up. You're talking about either Godfall.
Godfall. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what Valkyrie Elysium reminded me of.
No, it don't remind me of that.
In terms of design, not in terms of like, because the gameplay is obviously completely different, but
It reminds me of more of the new Nier, but in the old settings, like with old controllers.
just in a sense, because
reminds me-
Godfall had like a hub world, and then you drop into a level, and the level is super linear, and you just go through it, but it's not, and then it's like not much, interaction or like world building.
Because it all depends on what you're doing with your game. Because there's no blueprint to this to make it good. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I'm thinking of Devil May Cry, and that's Devil May Cry. But why is Devil May Cry interesting? Because they give you so many cool toys to play with.
Right.
Yeah,
When you're playing
the
Devil May Cry,
action is on a different level.
Yeah, so it's like that type of game works if you're gonna go balls deep into the action.
Yeah.
But if your action's boring, you got a game where you're sitting there spamming the same 3 moves every every room. People are gonna get bored of that.
The action wasn't boring, but all the games I tried, Star Ocean, Valkyrie Chronicles, Solstice, I feel like the action was not as smooth as what I'm used to now.
Well, Valkyrie Chronicles isn't an action game; it's a turn-based game.
No, I'm talking about Valkyrie Elysium. I'm sorry, Valkyrie Elysium.
Cool.
Like the combat wasn't like Valkyrie Elysium had the best combat, but it still wasn't. It wasn't even Devil May Cry level, and Devil May Cry came out years ago.
Yeah,
Um,
Well,
that's
Like Devil May
well,
Cry has one of the best combat systems of
yeah,
any game, though.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
That's how I'm gonna fuck around.
let's not forget Devil May Cry is on a whole nother level when we talking about combat.
but right, but
Yeah.
if you're gonna make that type of game, I
You
feel
have
like
to,
the
you have to
combat
cut
has
Is
to
it
the
that
be
type of game? I thought Chronicles was more of an RPG.
not Chronicles, Elysium.
Elysium. I thought Elysium was more of an RPG.
There's an
It is an
RPG
RPG.
system, but then if you look
well,
at the
yeah,
RPG system, it's very convoluted and
But the thing is, us comparing it to Devil May Cry is a far fetched. It's
I'm only comparing it to that because
you
when the
can't though.
levels that I played, it's like that's how I felt. Like you drop into this level and you gotta fight these enemies, but the combat isn't exhilarating to the point where it's like, okay,
and
I'm
and it's
expecting
crazy.
more.
But it's a RPG.
Right. So
RPGs don't have a lot of RPGs. Like great action.
Yeah, but if you're making an RPG, you're not leaning on the action. You have to make a whole world to go along with that action. If the
exactly.
Right.
combat only has to be a small part. What Don is saying is that if you're going to give me a game that you just load into a level and then fight the enemies in a straight line, then the combat needs to be Devil May Cry level, or else what the fuck am I playing?
Exactly.
Well,
That's how I felt.
I agree. I agree with that.
That's how I felt. And I didn't play. I only played the demo. So maybe in the real game,
But
there's
I feel
more.
the same way. I feel the same way about this game that I'm watching right now. Like I don't see how. First of all, a lot of them are still using Batman type lines.
But remember,
Like
people said that like the story
All
when you
right,
actually get into the game, it's 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 based on this story that recently came out called The Court of Owls, what people have said is a really good story. So they're already using the source material that people have acclaimed critically as being really good. I've never read it, so I don't know if I'm gonna enjoy it, but that's the thing. Like, if this action doesn't live up in Gotham Knights to that level, 9 times out of 10, me personally, I'm probably going to enjoy the story because I like Batman. That's why I'm saying I'm kind of biased. Like, I've never really ran into a Batman story I didn't like, just because I feel like the villains to me are so iconic. It's kind of like anytime I see Joker or Freeze, it's like I'm already a fan. So it's like,
I agree with that. But when Red Hood walks in, he says these Batman lines. Like he says stuff. I'm going to stop you from from doing this. He sounds like Batman. He doesn't sound like what Red Hood would sound like. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Does he say, "I am the one who knocks"?
yeah. Like he got all these Batman lines. Like, come on, man. Like, you put Batman in the game, he just don't got the name Batman. Like,
yeah, I mean, they're all kind of in his footsteps, right? So
I mean, the point of the game is who takes over the mantle, because they make out that there's only going to be one at the end. That's actually the knight type of thing.
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, that's kind of where where I'm at with that. So we touched on Gotham Knights, we touched on Valkyrie Elysium. I guess we've touched on everything. We've been talking for a minute here. Do we have any other topics we want to kind of touch on before we close out here?
Not that I can think of.
No, I'm good.
Greg, everybody's good. Hey man, it's been real. Episode 5, we're really building here. we're getting the episodes out now. I don't know if I touched on it earlier. I do want to kind of eventually I want to start doing more shows, but again, this will have to get way more consistent and get to episode 20, which is still my goal, get episode 20. And then I'm going to start doing more like tailored shows to different things. I want to branch out. I want to do movie reviews. I want to do a lot of different things. But this is just to be like the jump off point for me. So episode 5, we're building, we're having fun. I've definitely been able to share a lot of things I wanted to share over the week, and the news has been really shaking lately. So we're about to really get into a lot of new games are dropping. There's a couple games that came out that I didn't really talk about because I didn't really look into, but I'm going to look into next week. So look for that next week. I don't remember the name of them, but there's like a Monster Hunter game that's built in Unreal 5 that
Wild Hearts.
Wild Hearts. Yes, I'm glad you remember the name of it. That actually looked pretty interesting. But I didn't want to.
It's EA's indie branch that's going to be developing it.
Yeah.
along with it looks like it's EA Originals they're called, and I think the publisher is Koei Tecmo, which I find to be a really strange combination, but that's what was advertised. So it's like, I don't know, Japanese like ninja slash samurais. There's a building element, so you can build stuff to help you take down these huge monsters. Four
Yeah.
player
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah, it looked like it might solve the one personal problem I would say I have with Monster Hunter, which is the fighting speed.
Man, you try to get good.
Yeah, it looked like the way that it was fighting with Monster Hunter, I just never seen that fluidity. I want to say with a Monster Hunter game that there's been a lot of Monster Hunter like clones that have come out, and that was the first time I actually looked at it and was like impressed from looking at it. I'm not sure how it's going to play, but it really captured my attention, and I was like, maybe this will be the Monster Hunter game that I actually get into. So it's something that I want to look at more in detail, because I only like looked at it in passing. Like I saw like one guy with like a sword like slice at this monster. It looked really good. And I was just like, wow, what is that? And they said Monster Hunter Japanese. I'm like, what is this? It looks interesting, man. Like I'm very interested to see what that. And it seems like a lot of people are going Monster Hunter too. That's another thing. I'm starting to see a lot of because that new free-to-play looter shooter that's coming out later this year, Unreal 5, is going to have Monster Hunter elements. Like you shoot off a piece, that kind of gameplay loop. I wonder if that's like an easier thing to develop, like, or if that's something that like we can do, like people, like I wonder why that's like being added in.
It's because after all these years, people finally realized, oh shit, Monster Hunter is popular in Japan.
Yeah.
Remember that Monster Hunter was popular in Japan for years before World came out.
Yeah.
Early 2000s.
Finally, and they could never get Americans to get into it, and finally they got World, and then Americans got into World. Now everybody's like, oh shit. And if you think about how long it takes to develop a game and how long Monster Hunter World came out, now is around the time those games are going to start coming out.
Yeah, so I think it's one of the more interesting gameplay, like difficulty gameplay loops, right? Because it offers a lot. Just when you say you have to shoot off the specific part, it automatically jumps the difficulty up, because now you got to actually go for a certain part.
I feel like that part of the game is really overblown. Like it's part of it, but in my experience, when I'm playing Monster Hunter, it's rare that you actually have to It's like, all right, if certain times you'll have like a certain weapon, and you'll need a couple of scales, but it's really overblown. Like most of the times, that part will get hurt because the monster hit a tree or something. It's like it's not that big of a deal. Like I rarely. It's only a couple times. A couple times you have to slice the tail of a monster where you go, okay, let me focus the tail. But I play a lot of monster games. This is rare that I'm really struggling, trying to you know what I mean?
I didn't play too much Monster Hunter, but when I played Dauntless real heavy, you didn't have to hit the certain piece. Like you could keep playing and not have to do it. But right when you start to set a personal goal of something you specifically want, then they say, okay, now I know you fight all these enemies and you didn't pay attention and do what we said, but now if you want this thing, you're going to have to kill the tail of this beast. And then that's where the real grind comes in. It's like if you want this specific thing, but you could technically play the game and not get that specific thing. Is that how Monster Hunter is as well?
It is, but it isn't.
It depends on what your build is, basically.
Yeah.
So when you want to put together a build, then you start taking parts.
So you never get to a situation where it's like I should have been farming this the whole time and I wasn't, because it's like that's not how the game works. Anything that you're farming, you know why you're farming it, because that's why you're playing the game.
Right.
Yeah.
If you go into a monster, you'll know beforehand. Okay, I need to destroy this guy's front ankles or some shit. You'll know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No.
9 times out of 10,
Dauntless is you can just win, and then later on, because that's how they get you. They let you win, and then it's because it's free to play. So.
Oh, see then
they say, oh, go back and fight these monsters in enraged mode, and
Nah, it's not like that.
but if you want to bypass this for a low cost of $10.99.
Jesus.
I think you have. This is another case of your PTSD for these bad games.
Mhm.
So I really think that. I think Rise will be a good jumping off point for you. Like this,
Yeah.
the most recent version that came on Switch, and it might be on PC as well. You should look that up.
It is on PC. I just haven't played it yet.
I think that you should get it, but get it on sale.
Yeah.
And I know that because I know you're not into the slower paced combat. I really feel like it's gonna take you a minute to get used to the pace, but I promise you, the game is really popular for a reason. It all
Talking
works.
about Rise or World.
All to be honest, any Monster Hunter game, except for the very first one on the PS2. But
Yeah,
you know,
He didn't like Monster Hunter World.
I played World.
I was a big player of World.
I want to get into Wild at some point.
I mean,
I know
if
it's old.
anybody decide they want to play World, I play World a lot.
World was cool. I like World too.
I like the World. I played World. The problem with World that I seen was like if you don't have friends, you can join in with randos, but sometimes they'll mess up the objective of breaking a horn or like we're talking about when you're going after certain bills and they'll break it or kill it before you can get the piece that you need off of it.
See, that's a compromise because
And then you got a solo if that happens. And I've soloed a lot of bosses and a lot of raid bosses, and it's hell.
That's one game I tried extensively to get into, and I tried all of the weapons. Even I remember one time I had a group of friends that were really because I had a group of friends that were playing Anthem, and they were also big Monster Hunter World players, and so they would be up and they would invite me. They really wanted me to play the game. So at one point, the guy even let me like borrow his account to try all the weapons, and I would go out and he gave me the fastest weapon with like all the like bells and whistles on it, and I just felt like I was moving in quicksand. Like I just couldn't feel excited about what I was doing. And the only weapon that felt exciting to me was like the machine gun thing, just because it felt so heavy in my it felt
The light bow.
the light bow. I don't think I ever tried the light bow.
Sorry, not the light bow.
The light bow gun.
Yeah, the
Oh,
light bow,
that's the
the
one.
light bow gun. That's the one that I was able to. I don't know if you remember me playing that one. It was the only one that felt to me like I was doing anything. But I mean, you don't really move. You just kind of stand still and shoot. But it felt right.
It's a couple things that I think that contributed to you not liking Monster Hunter. One was that the heal was really, really slow. You got to stop to heal. That's one thing. And Monster Hunter is more a combat system than it is. So, like, once you learn the combat system, it's like 1, 2, 3 dodge, 1, 2, 3 roll dodge. So it's on a level of like an Elden Ring or something like that. And I think that combat kind of bothered you.
Oh yeah, it was like moving in quicksand.
It's like 1, 2, 3, boom, 1, 2, 3, and it didn't have enough magic for you. So for me,
I tried that big horn weapon. Was the one that like
the one gives your person buffs.
That is my shit.
Yeah, the one gives you buffs.
Not me.
What do you use?
I bounced around. I started out with the lance, I think, and then I ended up using dual swords and long sword.
How does it feel over there in Unicorn Land?
I used every weapon in the game, but my funnest weapon was the heavy blade, the biggest claymore in the game.
The great sword.
Yep, the great sword.
So with me, I try to every time a Monster Hunter game comes out, I try to main one weapon because that's the thing.
I tried to change up.
That's the thing about Monster Hunter is that it's like the combat is slow paced, but it's slow paced for a reason, and it's like all the things that happen in Monster Hunter, if you were to speed it up, it'd be ridiculous. Like there's just like
you need to see the monster's tails and stuff.
But but like a lot of people don't know this, it's a very extensive combat system for every weapon.
Yeah,
and it takes a long time to master it. Like if you jump around a weapon that you might have thought was shit, once you learn the combo for it, it's really fucking strong. Like the bow. The bow has one of the hardest hitting combos in the game, and it can literally break a horn in one shot. A horn but people don't know that because a lot of people don't learn the combat. They get in slow pace, they say, this ain't for me. But then you can go and watch a video of a person that knows the combo, and he knows exactly how, like he'll hit his combo, then he'll rotate around and hit it right in the right spot, boom, horn off. You be like, shit. So
now, let me give you an example, Don. So I played a hunting horn, right? So the way the hunting horn works is that, so you have different attacks that activate different notes. Now,
A bard.
so basically, in the way the reason this is cool is that when you first play, you'll notice that there's like a ton of moves. Like there's so many different jabs and stabs and things. It's like, what are the difference? They all hit in different spots.
Yeah.
So if you're fighting a monster that is taller than you, you gotta break its wing. Okay, you're gonna have to incorporate that upward swing into your moveset. And the upward swing, what note is that? It's really deep and it's so interesting.
Right.
But it has to be slow because there's so much going on.
Right.
If you speed that bitch up,
the problem is you won't hit that spot sometime if you speed it up. If the combat was sped up sometime, you wouldn't be able to do what it is that you're trying to do.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what.
I know how you play games. Yeah. Don's focused when he plays games. He's focused on his power fantasy. He wants his character to be strong.
Yes,
but
that's true.
That's not what Monster Hunter is about. Monster Hunter is about the monster. In fact, you don't need to be.
But you can be strong in Monster Hunter.
No, you can't be.
You can be strong in Monster Hunter.
You can be strong in Monster Hunter. Trust me, but you're never as strong as the monster.
Right.
I don't know. I've felt strong as a monster.
Yeah, the early ones. The early ones, Jaggy.
I've won and two tapped the monster.
It sounds like we have a date with Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
I'm downloading it right now.
Honestly, if you ask me, I'm old school. I don't like this new shit. So even fuck World. Go back and play like go play like 2 3 Unite or try. Like,
well, I do have World, but which one you say to go back and play?
Go back and play 2 Freedom Unite. It's on the PSP. You're gonna hate it. Oh god, you're gonna hate that game.
See, why is he? Don't do it. Just don't listen. Don't listen to
World. Don't listen to me.
After this, well, okay, I'm gonna end our because we have to end our podcast at some point. This has been great. Thank you guys for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and put what you want us to talk about next, or give us suggestions what we should talk about in the comments, and let us know how we did. All right, thank you guys.
Peace.
Peace.